Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach.
And my name is the Uncle Junior, and I go by the Consistency Coach.
And we are your coaches for Coach's Corner. As always, like we tend to say, if you're not going to do anything with this information that we're going to share with you today, then this may not necessarily be the place for you. But if you're looking to add value to not just yourself and your loved one, but the people that surround you, your community, and things of that nature, and you want to be you want to you want to be impactful in the lives of others, then you're in the right place at the right time. Not only that, I believe that you were destined to be here and listen to myself, the Mindset Coach, and my good friend, the Consistency Coach, on this evening. So saddle up, because I think we're going to have some fun. That being said, let me speak to my brother from another mother, the Uncle Junior himself, the Consistency Coach, the brother who I affectionately call C Square. How are you doing, my friend?
Man, I am doing well, brother. Doing well, doing good. Been enjoying my time, enjoying my days, and looking forward to another another great episode. You know what I'm saying? So, but other than that, all is well, man. Ain't complain about anything.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. What
Um,
about you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Like you said, I'm looking forward to another great episode as well. But as far as me and my personal life, all is well. I have no
Yeah.
complaints. A lot of great stuff on the horizon. I'm excited about the things to come. And just eating this eating this full size cake one bite at a time is always a
hmm
challenge. It's always a challenge that I willingly accept, and I accept with joy. So I just kind of want to throw that out there.
Yeah, man, that's all good, man. A couple of weeks ago, we had a show, and during the show, I talked about something that was going on, with not necessarily going on, but when you talked about parents and overstepping their boundaries, or how much input do we have into our kids' life and vice versa. So, after all of that, I end up did having the conversation with my son, and
Okay.
everything went well, because I text him, and I was like, matter of fact, during the show, I text him and I said, "Hey, watch from this point to this point." He watched it. He texted me back the next day or something. No, later on that night, and I told him we'll link up tomorrow morning because it was late on this end. And then we talked. We had a real good conversation about it and stuff like this. And at the end of the day, I realized, like I told him, I was like, brother, look, I have to. At the end of the day, I sit back and I say, you know what? Your past history of decision making is stellar. It's good. So I have no reason to question this one at the end of the day. And that was it. And he understood it. We had a great conversation, and everything was well. So I ended up did having that conversation, but um I didn't really need to, you know what I'm saying? But it was fun to have. You know what I mean? I didn't really need to have the conversation. It was more so like me just letting him know that, I kind of trust you. You know what I mean? Not that he needs my confirmation of my trust,
Mhm.
but I just wanted him to know that I'm proud of him and I'm happy that I have a son who has been making good decisions. I
Yeah.
don't know. Kind
No,
of
no.
rambling.
You get, man.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, I'm glad you had that conversation
hmm
and it worked out well. Um, and and I remember that conversation like it was yesterday.
hmm
I'm just an advocate of, like, they're adults. We got to give them room to grow. They're gonna make mistakes. Be okay with the mistakes that they make. If anything, I want to be on the backside of the mistakes to have conversations, see what they learn from it.
hmm
That's the thing that excites me more. If
Yeah.
I'm just being completely transparent, because the learning curve at that point is like huge. If they make a good decision, that's great. I'm happy they made that good decision. But if they made a decision that didn't work out for them, now I want to have that conversation, because in the midst of that conversation, just like the the their ability to leapfrog becomes available in that particular moment. So yeah,
hmm
I'm so glad that that conversation worked out for the best.
Yeah, man. It was super, what is it, stellar. It was
Mhm.
good,
Yeah,
man. It was all good.
yeah.
And before we move on to this week's episode, do want to acknowledge the chat and anybody who's watching. I really appreciate everybody and every soul, literally, who is here this afternoon. You guys could be anywhere else on a Tuesday night, but you decided to hang out with us hang out with me and Coach this Tuesday afternoon. So, with that being said, we were just talking about that other show, but this is kind of a continuation on with that. Me and my son, we had the conversation, and I have had a whole bunch of conversations, not only with that son, but with my other two sons. And the thing about that is sometimes I was talking, sometimes I was mentoring, sometimes I was teaching, sometimes I was doing nothing but just blowing smoke, and sometimes I was wasting their time. Meaning that they knew that can talk. They know dad can talk. So sometimes, as a punishment, sometimes we're gonna have a lecture. You know what I mean? There are sometimes, and I don't know if that's punishment or not, but here's what I'm saying. There is a situation that could be handled really easy. There is a lesson that could be learned very easily with a couple of words. I can drag that lesson out for 35 minutes and we in the car. You know what I'm saying? And I can repeat stuff. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, to the point that I used to have conversations, I'd be talking to both of them. And I'd be like, you got it? And one be like, yeah. And the other be like, well, Dad, what about this? And oh man, why you say? Because they already know they got 15 more minutes. Because I didn't hook them again when you got a question. So he was like, bro, stop asking questions because you know Dad going to keep talking. But I guess I say all that to say that sometimes when we're talking to our kids and our children, even adults, sometimes we are just talking. I'm not saying that every single conversation that we need to have with our children needs to be a talking, needs to be a teaching moment. But I do think that it is important to kind of separate teaching versus talking, and then kind of how we all fit into that. Cool with that? All right. So real quick, I got a real small monologue. It ain't nothing big, but I'm gonna leave it right here. So most fathers know how to talk. Fewer know how to teach, and even fewer stop to ask, are they actually learning from me or am I just filling space? Tonight, we're digging into the hard truth. If we want to pass down legacy, we've got to move from talking to teaching, from noise to influence, because wisdom is more than words, it's action wrapped in consistency. And I would say mindset has a whole lot to do with that as well. So with that being said, Coach, as we do all the time, we're going to start off with a definition. And the definition for the day is just teaching. So teaching, to kind of give a baseline for the conversation as we move forward, teaching is intentional, interactive, and focused on growth. Talking is one-sided, often passive, and sometimes just noise. Teaching leaves a mark. Talking often fades. Thoughts, comments, questions, concerns about this definition?
No, I like that definition. I know that as some are reading this, you can see some like one word here or there, to where you can be like, well, maybe, could be, possibly. But I think this definition is based upon what I would tend to call the ideal teaching environment. Some things that you're teaching, depending upon what you're teaching, it doesn't necessarily have to be interactive, right? Um, but the only reason in some cases it's not interactive because the person that you're teaching know absolutely nothing about what you're teaching. So they're like a
Mm,
blank slate and they're just absorbing it all. So I'm only using that as an example if somebody's looking at this definition and say, well, I don't necessarily agree with the interactive. This definition here highlights the ideal teaching environment.
okay. I like the fact that you said ideal because I believe too is I believe that as well. Ideal, best case scenario. So just to start off the conversation, man, as we going forward um today, how do you know if you're teaching or just talking? And when you respond to this, I know we're talking about we can kind of add to the conversation from last week when it comes to our children or adult children, but we don't necessarily have to. We can talk about significant other, spouses, work relations, senior, subordinate, all of those different things are on the table for this conversation.
Yeah. So first of all, that conversation I believe was 2 weeks ago,
Yeah, 2 weeks.
if I recall correctly. Um, but to this question, how do you know if you're teaching or just talking? Um, I think your definition is a great starting place. I think the first word in that definition was something like intentional. Teachers are extremely intentional about what it is that they're doing. Now, I think another part to it as well is that there has to be a student. And so I could be teaching, but if there is no student, then I'm just talking. Even if the person that I'm talking to does not recognize that there are a student in that particular moment. There's an old saying that goes along with this. When the student is ready, the teachers appear. Not that when the teacher is ready, the student would appear. So when we look at it from that perspective, in order for the teacher to be a teacher to that person, the student has to be ready, right? Because now that gets us into the ideal teaching environment. So now we're having interaction, right? We're going back and forth. I'm sharing some information and listening to what they're saying in response to see if there's that understanding. Going back 2 weeks ago on a Friday night, we talked about communication, right? And we talked about encoding and decoding. If I'm the teacher, I am encoding a message that I am sending to the student. The student has a responsibility to decode. That's that feedback loop that I'm looking for. It's pointless if the student is not giving me any feedback so that I can understand whether they're grasping what I'm sharing with them. And then I just keep going. So now, not only did I maybe possibly confuse them in the beginning, but they're going to continue to be confused because I'm still stockpiling on top of the stuff that I gave them in the beginning. So I think the knowing piece um, is part of being confident in what you're teaching. And the other side of it is like the student has to be ready to receive the information that you're teaching.
Mm. All right. So I think I understand all of that. And I don't know if I think I agree with you, but I think I want to add something else onto that. Um, I think what you're saying in not so many words is that you can't be a teacher if there is no student. Okay. So if I got my sons and I'm yelling at them and I'm screaming at them and I'm telling them, man, I told y'all you need to clean up this room because you're gonna own your own house one day and you're gonna want to keep it clean. You need to do this because you need to do that. You know what I mean? But if they haven't accepted their place as my student, even though they're my son, then I'm not really teaching. Is that what you was kind of saying?
Sure, but it looks different there
Okay.
because I think with children of children when it comes down to parenting, it's
Hmm.
a different thing.
Okay.
Because they were raised in the house, I was a de facto teacher to begin with. In fact, if you go, you turn back the hands of time when your boys just first started walking,
Hmm.
right? And sure, mama was, mama ain't doing what mamas do, right? But it's like wherever daddy go, that little boy wanted to follow, right?
Hmm.
Because you look like him, you like he like, okay, that's my teacher. And he will follow you and want to be around you. You leave, daddy, where you going? Can I go? Like so
Yeah.
that's him being 100% a sponge at that particular point in time. But I'm sure you remember me mentioning this in the past. Children hit gates. And if we miss those gates, we start losing their attention. I think a lot of parents sometimes get into the space to where they recognize that their child is a teenager, but they want that child's attention just like they had it back when that child was a little young, in their younger stages. But no, that you have to recognize and appreciate they're now practicing the things that you taught them all those years leading up to that point. So your window of teaching went from that to this. So
Yeah.
now the question is, what is the quality of the message that I'm giving them in this moment? Because I'm gonna go back to what you said earlier. Yeah, dad likes to ramble. And they know it.
Hmm.
So it's like when they walk in the door from hanging out with their friends or whatever, they come in with that busy walk. You know the busy walk. They taught you that in the army, right? You had that
Yep.
busy walk, so like you
Yep.
on a mission. You walking past dad because you got to get
Yep.
to your room because if you just, hey dad, what's going on? You just
Got
open up
him.
the door and dad is gonna unleash the beast on you. So that's what I mean when I say parenting is different because
Hmm.
you have a student, a willing student, but then a lot of times we lose their attention.
Yeah, man. I like you for kind of cleaning all this stuff up, man. I do have a lot of good talking points. And as we continue with this conversation, as we're teaching and as we're talking, especially when I think this one sometimes comes out being honest, this this was a fine line in my first marriage. I would say that. I thought that I had knew everything about the Bible. I'd raised in a church and I knew every word that was in there. And if you was up at nighttime watching Midnight Love, oh, you gonna have to hear my mouth. I'm just letting you know that's how I was. You know, I was one of them Bible tongue lashers. They try to beat people up with the word. I'm just saying, just being honest and being transparent. I didn't know. That's what I thought I was supposed to do is try to do that. And it was totally wrong and it was counterproductive, you know. And I found myself doing more preaching than sharing wisdom in that relationship. Now, I only use that relationship because for me, that's where I saw this at the most in my life as I've looked back over my life. In my current relationship, I see myself sharing a lot more wisdom than doing the preaching. You know what I'm saying? So, and I know I've talked about the two, but we haven't talked about the difference between the two. So, with that being said, coach, what do you think the difference is between sharing wisdom and preaching? Hold on, you muted.
My bad. Sorry about that.
All right, you good.
I love this question, by the way. One word, and then I'll expound on it. It's focus. If
Hold up, hold up, because I want to give the chat a couple seconds to ponder on that first before you go into detail about it. And I want a second to focus. I want to kind of put it together. Focus. Okay. All right. I think I may have something now. You can proceed. I'm sorry.
no, and there's an old saying, and I know I'm going to mess this up, so somebody please correct me in the chat. There's an old saying that says, "A fool speaks because he has something to say, but a wise man speaks when he has something to say." I know I messed it up, so somebody help me clean it up. And
Hmm.
it's when they help me out, you'll see exactly what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Wisdom mean that I don't have to talk all the time, but when I have something for the other person, then I talk, and that thing that I share with them is not only for them, but it aids them in whatever it is they're trying to do. Preaching, in most cases, is because I love the sound of my voice. And so, because I'm enamored by the sound of my voice, I just keep talking over and over and over and over and over again. And then a lot of times I become repetitive in what I'm actually saying because, again, I want to make sure I'm hammering it home. Well, you heard me the first time. You got two ears you can hear, right? So you heard me the first time. So I think when I recognize that wisdom allows me to focus on the other person and preaching, I'm mostly focused on me because I think that what I have to say is more profound. So I'm just going to keep saying it over and over again because I'm looking for the oohs and the ahs and how it was in the church. I'm preaching better than y'all, amen, and stuff like that. So that's kind of like in my thoughts the difference between the two. If I have something for you, like I use this as an example, I won't give the details because I'm still kind of raw when it comes down to this particular talking point because it got way under my skin. But me and my son had a conversation the other day, and he shared something with me, and I kind of gave my feedback in relation to the little bit that he shared. But then he gave me a little bit more after that. And I said, okay. And I left it at that. Because again, like I don't just say things, I actually practice what I here it is, preach. Right. And so he said, "No, Dad, I want your opinion. What do you think?" And so I gave him my opinion. And then he gave me the details behind it. And once he gave me the details behind it, I said, "Oh man." He said, "No, go ahead and say it." And I was like, in my mind at this point, because I'm talking to a 20-year-old man, and I know that what he is about to embark on is not good, even though it's with a particular person of interest, right? Not good. And I'm being vague intentionally because I don't want to offend him with this, right? If just in case he look at the show. So he said, "Give me your thoughts. I need you to give me your thoughts." I'm like, okay. So then when I gave him my thoughts, it wasn't how I felt about it. It was what I knew about it. and I compared what he shared with me to what is more right when it comes down to negotiations. Because believe it or not, there's a law of negotiation, and I'll share it real quick. It's like negotiation means that we both walk away from the table with something. But if I walk away from the table with everything, then that wasn't negotiation. That was a manipulation, right? And so I kind of shared the art of negotiation. You're gonna get the terms, then I get the money. But if you get the money, then I get the terms. And that's kind of like it has to be a balance in there. And if it's not, it doesn't work itself out. Well, in my opinion, I think that was an act of wisdom. Why? Because that information that he got in that particular moment, even though he could use it right then and there, he can literally use that for the rest of his life. And so preaching, on the other hand, would have been like, well, it's not a good idea to do this because at the end of the day, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. And at the out, and it's just not wise, son. It's just not a good idea. And I remember back in 1985, when I ran up against a situation and this is how I viewed it. And this is what happened with me. He didn't ask you about you. He asked you about his current situation right then and right now. And I think that's the difference between wisdom and preaching. Wisdom focuses on them and help them in the spaces that they are in. Preaching, well, I like the sound of my voice, so I'm gonna keep on talking.
I'm about to throw my mom under the bus. Holly Jordan, if you out there, I know you are. All right, so I would say this. I'm just going back. So as you were talking, as you were
Wait,
finishing
wait,
up, I
wait, wait,
started.
wait, wait a minute. I gotta say this. With Charlotte Jordan, I was set up. I just want to say that.
No, yeah, coach don't know nothing about this, right? So I may or may not say it. I may throw you on the bus. I don't know. It may not be throwing you on the bus. I would say this. As you were ending up, I started thinking about, as I was growing up, did I get more teaching? I mean, I get more preaching, or did I get more wisdom? And not just from my parents, but uncles and grandparents and everybody. I think I'm now Charlotte Jordan, I think may have gotten a lot more. I think she was a lot preachier. I think I got a lot of preaching growing up from Charlotte Ann. I got a lot of wisdom from my dad. Now, as I started to look back and get older, I still did get a lot of wisdom from my mom. I just recognize it more in my dad than my mom. I remember my dad would say, little small things like I've told you, my dad was on drugs, right? So my dad, I remember one time it told me something like he was like, man, don't ever do drugs. He said, man, because it only take one hit and you could be out of here. You could be hooked for the rest of your life. And I was like, I don't want that. So he didn't give me a whole spiel about his life and his usage and stuff like this. It was that one simple thing, that wisdom, bro. You don't ever want to be on this stuff. So and I do remember my mama telling me stuff. I remember she jacking me up on the wall when I was 13 years old, and she tell me, don't ever forget where you came from. So I remember those things, which that's wisdom too, what she taught me then too. So I was just thinking about growing up, kind of how much wisdom, kind of comparing how much wisdom and preaching I got growing up from everybody. Sometimes when I look out there, it seems like a lot of people got some preaching, but I don't know, man. What do you think your experiences has been in the past? Because I remember you said you had the Uncle Brigade.
I think it's all wisdom to at a certain point when you're
Okay.
growing up. When you're growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Simply because in most cases, especially as we're literally growing up, you're a blank
Mm-hmm.
slate. So
Yeah.
every bit of information that you get is wisdom. At a certain point, when you get to the point where you're hearing the same things over and over and over and over and over again, same thing you heard last year, the year before last, so forth and so on. Now it gets into preaching. But the only reason it gets into preaching is because you taught me this already, right? Not only did you teach,
Mm.
you taught me how to apply it. You also, we may have had conversations about me trying to apply it and it didn't necessarily work out the way I thought it would. And then, you may have asked me a question like, okay, cool. So this is what you did. This was the outcome. but you was expecting the outcome to be over here. So what do you think the difference in between the current outcome you have and the outcome that you desire? See,
Mm,
that's a conversation that's wise, because
yeah.
now you're drawing me into the decision making cycle to understand that there's something that I did that was wrong. It wasn't the lesson, it was my decision in the lesson. And so I will. I mean, I think at a certain point, as a child, all of it is wise, and then when
Mhm.
you get a little older, the repetition of the same lessons now it's becoming more preaching. And again, a lot of times we call it preaching because it's stuff that we're hearing. And Mama, Dad, Mama, I got it. 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 Oh my
And then
god.
what we say?
Oh
Well,
my.
why you ain't doing it then?
Right. Exactly. And you wipe your. Oh my goodness, Dad. Don't go downstairs, man. Mama acting crazy. Daddy acting up. Whatever you do, avoid them. If you gotta go to bed, if you gotta go to the kitchen, you might want to starve yourself until midnight. I'm trying to tell you.
Oh man, that's funny stuff, man. Hey man, so far, man, we've been rolling. We only got like 2 questions done, and we almost did 30 minutes. So, but since the audience is here and I know they participating. I know they probably getting on me about Charlotte Ann and stuff like that. They probably got me. So, but I got something for them too, for us, for everybody. This is a question for coaches and the audience, and and I understand that not everybody may not have had a father, and I get that. So, maybe your dad, I mean, your mom or an uncle or your grandfather or somebody else like that. So, what did somebody, but specifically us, what did your dad teach you without saying a word? He didn't have to say it. It was just a lesson, something that you picked up along the way without them never having to say a word.
Yeah. Um, I'm not gonna lie. When I first seen this question, I was like, "Ooh,
Uh-huh.
uh, this is a good question." And
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna be 100% transparent. My initial thought was absolutely nothing.
Mm.
That was my initial thought. But then when I thought about it, I was like, "Well, that's not true," because I learned a lot of what not to do. And again, for most who don't know, my mother and my dad separated when I was 3 years old. And, there was like a year where I would see him because he was in the States. He was in the army. There was a year I would see him where he was in the States, and may have been 2 or 3 years where I didn't see him because he was in Germany. And so I didn't really get a whole lot of life lessons. It was always excitement to see him. Um, but not a lot of sit down conversations to where, let me share this with you because I think this will help you. At least none that I can remember at this point in time. I won't say that they didn't happen, because there were times we would sit down in the living room when I go visit him, just he and I, watching TV, and he'll say a few things here and there, and I'm like, okay, cool. But there's always a lesson that can be learned, and sometimes the loudest lessons are the lessons that did not have words. And in the midst of that, a lot of those lessons aren't necessarily, um, lessons that they intended to teach. I say it that way. So there was a lot that I was that I learned from him, um, a lot in the realm of what not to do. But then by that same token, today it's a different conversation. It's a different person, different talks that we have. Because we spend now when we get on the phone and talk, we talk about the Bible. And a lot of it is more so of not so much as lessons, but more so of just conversations, based upon the Bible. Because um, um, it was a struggle from him, initially, but then now I think he's embraced the fact that we can have those conversations. And so if I can name a thing, particularly at the age of 70 years old, to be able to get on the phone and have an equilateral conversation with your son is an awesome thing. I think that's huge, right? But in my younger years, I would have said absolutely nothing.
That's something me and I know the chat probably appreciate that transparency. I would say for me, it is kind of how to love. You know what I mean? I saw my dad, I know, the Bible talks about love and different things like that. And there's scripture after scripture that depicts it. and stories and fables and all those different things. But sometimes having that visual representation is something that sticks. You know what I mean? And especially if you know, I don't read a lot of books. I mean, do art. I do audio books. I still get the information in, and I would rather watch the movie than watch the book. So for me, watching my dad made it made things come together. I saw what some people may call unconditional love. Even though my dad had his situation and stuff, I saw him love my mama. I saw him love his kids. I saw him love people. I saw him help people. Um, I saw that. You know what I mean? I saw me and one of my cousins one year, we had a conversation many years ago about my dad. And one of the things we talked about was kind of the two different people that he was. You know, when my dad was young, you know, him and my mom got married really early. My dad was a minister in the church, saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Spirit, Charlotte Jordan, missionary, all this stuff. Bible Way, Pentecost, the Apostolic Church of God in Christ. Like that's where we went. Like we stayed in church and all of that stuff. And that is who my my cousin one time she said, man, she said, I wish my kids, she said, I wish my daughter and this next generation could know that guy. They call my dad Boss. So she said, Uncle Boss. She said, I wish we could know Uncle Boss. So my dad, like that Uncle Boss, like Boss, that joker wasn't nothing but nothing but the truth. And I saw the love. I constantly saw it. You know, he didn't have to say it. I didn't understand it then, but as I got older and I started to go back and reflect on love and stuff, that's one of the things that he taught me, at least in my interpretation, kind of sort of a type of love. I'll put it like that. That must be my Deshelle texting me because only nobody can get through unless they like, you know, cause my phone don't do not disturb. So unless they like one of those four people, nobody else ain't getting through. But
Now, there's a
I know.
caveat. There's one
Have you?
caveat I want to share. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
as you get older, you understand things that you did not understand when you were younger. And so I had that epiphany years ago, right? And so in the midst of like with this particular question, my answer still remains the same, but there's a caveat to it. The caveat is that there are certain restrictions that you don't necessarily know about as a child that happens when two people who are who have a child and they're no longer together. There are certain things that are in place that you do not have any understanding of. So I will add that to the table as well because that is a factor, believe it or not, especially for a soldier.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you guys can play along too. This is Coach's rapid fire questions. So the first one is talk or teach. What's harder?
Definitely teach
One lesson you hope your child learns from your life.
that at the end of the day, he was human, but like kind of like you said about your dad, he loved them with no limits whatsoever.
What teaches more, your wins or your wounds?
Definitely your wounds.
Can silence be a teacher?
It can be
Do you remember more from words or actions?
actions.
When did your child teach you something?
Every time I talk to him, to
Mhm.
them,
What's more powerful, what you say or what you do?
what you do
What's your best nonverbal lesson?
for me or from someone else.
However you want to respond.
My best nonverbal lesson is the expression of character traits.
Good one. Do your habits match your advice?
Me? Yeah.
Is it better to be heard or observed?
Observed.
All right, that was it, man. How'd you like them?
It's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah,
I don't know, it's just yeah, it was good. I think this one was a little easier than the last one. I don't
I
know.
think
Maybe,
so.
yeah, maybe it's my perception. I don't know.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then you kind of knew what to expect this time too,
that's true too.
based off the last one. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, I like those. Um, We're gonna do one more question. We're gonna go to a would you rather. Um, how do you stay relevant without being overbearing? And I know I will say this. I remember, I know you talked about those, I don't know, use a different word, but like those time points or those changes in your kids' life as they're growing up and you can miss them, and I think this is where this question comes in. How do you stay relevant without being overbearing? So I find that now I want to be relevant in their life, but I don't want to be, hey man, what you got going on? Hey man, what you doing? What you doing? Texting all the time. They got their own lives.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I want to be involved. But you know what I'm saying? So how do you stay relevant without being overbearing?
Remember that you're Robin and not Batman. I kind of talked about this previously. I think this very similar question would have came up 2 weeks ago. They're adults. Allow them to make their own decisions. Allow them to make their own mistakes. When they ask you for advice, be willing to give it. Make sure that the advice that you give them is to such a degree that it can propel them beyond you. Which means that your advice that you give them incorporates the lessons that you learn in life. So we have to remain humble throughout the entirety of this process. Being relevant is good, but I can't force the relevancy on them. It has to be relevant when they need me to be relevant, not just because I want to be relevant. And that kind of goes back to the whole conversation about wisdom and preaching, right? Who's the focus? The focus is always on them. Well, if the focus is on them, then that means that I have to allow the space to be there so that I don't look like that fool versus the wise man, right? And that was the saying that I was saying. I looked it up. I ain't gonna lie. Wise men speak when they have something to say. Fools speak because they have to say something, right? So that overbearing person is the one that have to say something, but the wise man speaks because they have something to say, and that something is beneficial to them always, but it's not all the time.
Like you said, the focus part. Like I want to, like when we say I want to stay relevant in my son's life, that's me. That's self-focused. You know what I'm saying? Now, the reasons why I think are good, but they're still self-focused. I want to be relevant in their life because I want to be the one who teach them these lessons. I want to be the one who give them these things. But they got cousins and families and uncles and friends and mentors and bosses and NCOs. All my sons in the military, so they all got NCO. They all can reach out and touch a sergeant major right now. You know what I'm saying? So I like what you said about that part about, you brought the focus piece back, staying relevant, that's focused on kind of us. But um I think part of that is, I think for me, I think I want to be able to remain and have the relationship there. You know what I'm saying? So I think if the relationship's there, they will reach out. They will say, you know, they will want to be part of your life as well. You know what I mean? And then you won't necessarily have to be overbearing because they want to be part of your life as well. So
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying previously about the attention, right?
mhm.
When they were young, I got all the attention because I was their provider. I was the one that
Yep.
did this for them and did that for them. And then they got very accustomed to that. And as they got older, it was like mom, dad, mom, dad, mom, dad, mom, dad. But then when they turned to teenagers, it's like less mom, dad, only when they need something, right? Mom, dad,
Mhm.
get $20. Can I get some money? Can I borrow a car? All of that stuff. But it's like now they're grown. You don't really hear mom, dad every day, but you still want the mom, dad, even if it's can I get $20, right? You want
Mhm.
that now to where when back
That's
then, you're like,
crazy.
every time you come to me, all you come to me for is money. Now, as an adult, like they can come to you for money, you be like, okay, come on by the house.
Yeah.
You're gonna give them the money because they're coming by the house. But
Yeah.
you wanted them to come by the house, they wanted the money. So that was your interpretation of negotiating, right? I get the terms, you get the money, right? So that's what it
Uh-huh.
and at some point you get to the point of realizing that wait. That ain't right. That ain't right. Like if I wasn't here, then how would you get the money?
Mm-hmm.
So what lesson am I preventing you from learning right now by being that person that every time you come by the house, you want me to put gas in your car or something of that nature?
Mm-hmm.
Um, why can't we just come by and you sit down and we talk? Because see, those are that's what relevant look like to us. To them,
Mm-hmm.
because you got to remember, we used to be them now.
Yeah.
To them, not so much. Like
Yeah.
they work in another state and they come home and visit. They got to go see some friends. They got to go see the cousins and all that other great stuff. And so they come by. They come to the house and they're to the house about an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Now, all right, I gotta go. I gotta go and meet such and such and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, man, I ain't seen you since like last year, and you only been here for 2 hours, and so your feelings is hurt. But again, like you said, that's all focused on me instead of appreciating the fact that what I got to spend the last 2 hours with my kids, and it was pretty doggone awesome.
Man, that was me like last week. Them jokers came in. Well, one came in, and then next thing you know, a couple of days later, Ian was like, Quasi be home. So then Quasi came home, and then I hung out with Quasi a little bit, and Ian. But then next thing you know, Ian left. Like I think 4th of July, he left out. I ain't see him the 4th. I ain't see Ian for 2 days. He ain't come back. He was gone. So he the 20-year-old. The 23-year-old, he stayed here most of the whole time. He had another homeboy that went in the military with him. They went off for a little bit, but he came back and stuff. But the trio, I think he was here about 7, 8 days. I think 3 or 4 days. I think he was here half the time. So, but yeah, so to your point. But my feelings hurt a little bit too. The last, I'm like, man, this joker ain't came back here. But I'm just like, man, this joker. I mean, why he don't want to hang up in the house with me? You know what I'm saying? So he out with his boys, and they on that Don Julio and girls. All the stuff they do at 21 years old.
Right. You just
So
got to remember that was you at one point in time,
it was.
and that kind of helps you to level out your emotions and how you feel in relation to
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I used to come in, go see Charlotte Ann, and yeah, I dropped my son off. Dude said I was gone.
I got a
Well,
baby.
she got on me one time though. I ain't gonna never forget that. I'll give her some transparency to kind of make up for earlier. So I was out there. I was not doing what I was supposed to do. And Charlotte was like, Junior. She called me Junior. Call me Junior. She said, Junior, because I used to come in, drop my son off, and I'd be out. She said, you're wrong, and you stop doing what you're doing. I was out. I still left. But I never did forget that. And even in that situation, that was wisdom that she
Mhm.
gave me. She knew that what I was out there was I was up to no good. Now, she didn't know specifically what I was doing, but she probably had a good idea because we had that conversation in term back in the day. Ain't nothing open after 12 o'clock except for IHOP and something else. You know what I'm saying? So she knew that I was out there and I wasn't up to no good. And to this day, I remember, she on the chat, she in Ferncliff Apartments. I remember exactly when it was at nighttime. I remember her telling me that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So I remember getting a bunch of wisdom from my mom too, even as an adult child. You know what
And
I'm
those
saying?
and those are the best ones
They
because,
hurt a little, they sting.
well, not just that, but they keep reverberating.
Yeah.
You keep hearing it. You keep
Mm-hmm.
hearing it. Next thing
Yep.
you know, you're driving back home. This 7 hour drive I got to make, and I'm
Yeah.
hearing the voice in the back of my head. And now it's like, man, you know what? She right.
Yep.
Why am I doing that? You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? Why do I do that? And so it's like, yeah, you start to restructure your values at that point.
Mm-hmm.
That's what wisdom does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the accountability piece, brother.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. We ain't got about 3
Shout
questions,
out,
brother.
shout out to Miss Charlotte Ann. That's what
Shout
I'm saying.
out to Miss Charlotte Ann.
Stand firm on the
Um,
truth.
she Charlotte ain't play. She ain't big as nothing. I think she might be 5'1", 5 foot.
That's all right.
She 5 foot, and I got a 4'11" sister too.
But
I'm
seven,
taller than all of them. I'm 5'6", brother.
7 foot two. Hey, 7 foot 2 in wisdom though.
She is. She is. She is. All right. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna move on to a scenario. So this scenario is about integrity. So here's the scenario. Your grown kid asks your opinion about his relationship, but you know your honesty could hurt him, could hurt. Do you speak up?
Yes. Oh, my bad. I'm supposed to say more. So
You can, yeah.
so I think this is a space that most people find themselves in a lot of time, whether it's about with their kids or with their friends or whatever. Um, if they ask me for my opinion about their relationship, and again, it's also, as we used to say in the army, it's also Met TC dependent. If you're asking me an opinion about a particular thing, my initial thought is why you're asking me for my opinion in regards to this thing. I want to know before I give you my opinion, what is the concern that exists? That kind of gives me more information before I give an opinion. Because you got to realize there's always three sides to a story. You got your side, you got her side, his side, and then you have the truth. And
Mhm.
so if you're going to give me only your side and ask my opinion, then be advised that my opinion is only in regards to what you're sharing with me. However, my opinion might change if I hear her or his side of the story in relation to your side. So, do you speak up? Yes, because my opinion, hopefully, and now I can only speak for me, my opinion will be based on the truth, not my past experience. Only if my past experience add more detail as to the truth itself, but my opinion should be based on the truth. I should not be given how I feel. I should not be intertwining my emotions into your relationship. None of those things should be there. It should only be me listening and me responding with wise information that will help you make a better decision.
Yeah, I like that. That's I'm on board with that because I agree that you need to speak up or that you should speak up. Because again, you came to me asking for my opinion. Now I can't really focus, I can't control if you're hurt by that. That's on you. You know what I mean? I'm not responsible for that. My job is to make sure that my delivery and how I come across as best as possible is on par with effective communication. I would say it like that. Now, effective communication can be direct as well. Um, but I think that you definitely need to speak up. And like you said, there needs to be some wisdom behind your opinion, because, hey, dad, you know, I got this girl, I met her, she's 19 years, no, she's 23 years old. She got 4 kids. She got 3 baby daddies. But I love her so much. Right off the rip, I'm gonna be like, bro, nah, 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 nah. There's a lot going on right there. But I may say the same thing, but I may say, hey, look, brother, whatever it is you decide to do, man, what is it about this woman that you like? What are the long-term things? I may ask other questions to kind of see to get some more context about it before I get my opinion. You know what I'm saying? But definitely I agree that I'm speaking up because you asked me. So I got to say something.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you mentioned how you would do it, because I think that's important. Like, given the scenario that you gave, I would, my
Mhm.
initial question would be like, okay, before I give you my opinion, how do you know you love her?
Mhm.
What is it about you? What is it about her that you love?
Mhm.
Um, how long have you known this person? Like, all of these things are going to factor in to me giving an opinion. But I have be careful in giving the opinion too soon, because
Mhm.
opinion that is given too soon is how you feel about their situation. Because it's easy for my son to come to me and say, like you said, I met this girl, she got 4 kids by 3 different dudes, whatever the case may be. But she changed now. She's changed. She's
Yeah,
a
she
changed person.
changed. Yep.
Well, how old them kids is? Well, they 1, 2, and 3. Wait a minute. Let's back up. Okay, let's talk about this, because I already, like, kind of like what Gaddy said a couple of weeks ago. I already
Yeah.
formed an opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I already
Yep.
formed an opinion. So
Mhm.
let me make sure that my opinion is absent. Like, my opinion for what I would do for myself is absent, because this
Mhm.
isn't about me, it's about him or her. So I think that's important.
Yeah. I agree, man. I think you kind of talked about that earlier, you know what I mean? So if I only have this much information and I give you my opinion, it may look different once I get this much more context behind it. So I'm going to ask questions to get as much context about it at first. So whereas I feel or think that I have enough information to give you an accurate, unbiased opinion that you want, So you just like, yeah, I just got this. Come on, brother. Like, you gotta give me more than that. Cause if that's all you giving me, that's probably the answer you're gonna get. So um here you go with a different one. Did I do this one last week? No, this ain't it. Your son made a decision you disagree with, but now he's leading his own family. Do you correct or respect?
Quick answer: respect.
Hmm. Respect. Hmm.
Respect. And I have to recognize that because he's now leading his own family. He's an adult.
Hmm.
Like I said, you got to give them a space to make their own decision and make their own mistakes. Whether I agree with it or not is not part of his decision making process. Now, at some point in time, I would desire for the things that I taught him to be so relevant in his life that he may ask himself, oh, what would my dad do? Like, sure. But again, is there a requirement for him to do that? No. I want you to think about what would Jesus do, if I'm being honest, right?
Yeah.
But by that same token, I also got to realize like he's his own person. He makes his own decision.
Mhm.
Going back to that whole situation I was telling you about earlier.
Yeah.
Whatever decision he make, I gotta respect it. But
Yeah.
man, oh man, I
Yeah.
want to correct it, but I can't.
This is one of my favorites because and I will start by this. Um, how do you lead by example when words don't work? And I think you just do that. Just be an example. Be an example. One of the things that I've thought about, and one thing that I've told men or whatever is be the person, try to be the man you would want your daughter to marry. You know what I mean? So I don't have daughters, but if I had a daughter, I would want her to marry a halfway decent guy. So that's the guy that I try to be. I try to, I don't I'm not going to always have the words to say everything that I need to say. My sons may not come to me for information or for a lot of things in life or whatever, for mentorship, for whatever. They may find other people, and that's okay. But one thing that I can do is I can focus on being a better version of myself every day as an example to them. So when they see me, they see physically what I look like. They see how I interact mentally. They see how I interact on social media. They see how I interact with my wife. They see how I interact with my coworkers. They see how I interact with my wolf pack and different people who I'm in business or different things like that with. So I think when words don't work, when you don't have words, I think one of the other things that you can do is be the example or be a blueprint. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that every man out there should necessarily desire for their child, their son to be like them, or that every son wants to be like their dad or anything like that. But what I am saying is that if nothing else, I think that we can be an example of what right looks like. So for me, my response to this or to this question would be is be that example, a good example.
I like that. Um, my initial thoughts to this question is why? Why words don't work, but I'm a steer clear of that first. In the book of John, and I hate to go down this route, but I'm gonna go down this route just a little bit. In the book of John, everybody should know it. Like in the beginning was the word, and right. So that's the book of John. The first 13 verses describes something very significant. But when we get down to verse 14, verse 14 says something that's very interesting. It says, "And the word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, and the glory of the only begotten Son, of only begotten Father, full of grace and truth." So the word was made flesh. So, how do you lead by example? By allowing the word to be made flesh in you so that you can dwell among them. That should have been during their adolescent years. I think it's an honorable thing for a child to want to be like their father, for a son to want to be like their father. I think it's a beautiful thing for a daughter to want to be like her mother. But a lot of times that doesn't happen because the word never became flesh in them. And when they dwelt among the children seen things that they did not like, and they tried to pattern their life so that they did not experience those things. So I lead by example by allowing the word to become flesh for me so that my words matter to them.
How do grown children best learn from their parents? And I know there are a lot of different ones, so it don't have to be best. So if
Mhm.
you want to change it to, a way or a couple of ways that children learn best from their parents, that's more than welcome as well. So how do you think grown children best learn from their parents?
By their parents being someone that their children can learn from. I mean, I hate to say it that blunt, but yeah, that's really what it is. I think, again, going back to the word becoming flesh, I think a lot of times when the child sees that, and it's very disheartening when you place value on a person based upon their net worth. I'll say it that way. Um, but that's the society that we live in. And a lot of times, what you find, especially today, is that children look at their parents, and because their parents have never exceeded X amount of dollars, then that's not someone that they can learn from. And that is the worst. And that is the worst thought that any person can have. It's the most, I can't say that there's any value in that thought, right? Because even though a person may not have achieved a net worth, that does not necessarily mean they don't have the wisdom that
Mhm.
would have allowed them to achieve a higher net worth. So, going back to my original answer, because I wanted to make sense, when parents become people that the children can learn from, then that child can best learn from their parents.
Yeah, I like that. To add to, I'm kind of stuck or torn between two things. One is example, and the other is through conversation and communication. Um, I'm going to take out the physical interactions because the example part, because just to make it more general to everybody. Most people have a phone, but not everybody can physically be in contact with their parent. My mom's in Virginia, I'm in North Carolina. Can't physically see her every single day, but we can call each other. So I think one of the best ways we can learn is through our conversations and those teachings that we were talking about. Not just the talking, but the teaching as well. When I'm having a conversation with Charlotte Ann and I am putting myself, I may ask some questions, and then once I ask those questions, I may put myself in the student role then. Like we were talking about the student and the teacher and teaching. So now once I've asked Charlotte Jordan these questions, hey, this, I'm open. Now she can impart wisdom and different things into me, and we can banter and go back and forth for hours if we want to. You know what I mean? So I think one of the best ways is through building and conversation and building that relationship. The relationship I have with my mom is not the same relationship I had when I was 13 years old and she jacked me up by my collar up against the wall. It's different. You know what I mean? I really believe I don't, that was so long ago. I'm almost 50. I can't really recall, but I really do believe that was the last time that I disrespected my mom. I really do believe that. I don't know, but in my mind, that's when it was when I got that rude awakening and her 5 foot self was up in my neck. You know what I'm saying? Telling me she's still my mama. You know what I'm saying? So we can have those conversations and she can say stuff to me and she can still jack me up under my neck and my collar and tell me certain things, but it's not physical anymore. Junior, you're wrong about this. You shouldn't be doing this. I see this, blah blah blah. So I think one of the best ways we can learn from our parents is just learning more about them, learning and building that relationship. The more I call and have a conversation with her, the more I learn about her, the more stories I get about my father, the more stories I get about her mom and other different things like that, and how she is and who she is as a person. So, and she's not the same person who jacked me up when I was 13 years old either. You know what I'm saying? So we both have grown and matured and had a lot of life in between that time, you know. So
Yeah,
yeah, man.
and
I bet
I think the collar jacking was necessary.
it
That's why
was.
that's why you have the relationship you have today.
Yeah. It was necessary.
And I want to make not just the collar jacking, y'all. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
listen, stop talking about Charlotte Ann like that.
That's
Everybody,
my
you
buddy.
gonna hey, you gonna think everybody thinks you gonna make everybody think she's an abuser. She's not an
No.
abuser.
Oh
Listen,
no.
there's a certain time in every young man's life that
Mm-hmm.
they get full of testosterone, and
Mm-hmm.
they kind of want to buck up and challenge their mother. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of that, trust me when I tell you, sometimes that's necessary.
Yeah, because I mean, like I said, I think that was the last time. Like, there is nothing worse than being thinking you're a whole grown little boy. You got, you know, I think I had one chest hair then, maybe two armpit hairs or something like that. And I thought I was big bad stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, and then to look down, and next thing you know, I'm up against the wall. But like I said, I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't fight back. So I was okay with whatever was happening at that time to me. Like you said, it probably was deserved. I probably was out of line enough to whereas physical violence or physical contact had to be established. It is what it is. I get it. You know what I mean? She can't get the switch out at 13 or more. But so she's going to a different method. And that's not illegal. It wasn't illegal in Virginia. So I didn't call nobody.
I got a collar jacking too, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got picked up off my feet and pinned against the wall.
Crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm telling you, listen, I'm not just making this stuff up. I
Yeah.
understand it. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, oh man. Here's the last question of the evening, brother. When does silence teach louder than speaking?
Mm, very,
Mhm.
very strategic.
Yes.
I would say, especially if we're talking adult children, um, my silence is an expression of my respect of your adulthood. So it warrants you to come and ask me a question. I no longer just give unsolicited advice. Now, in the realm of communicate of relationship, I'm sorry. In the realm of relationship, my silence may mean that when I was speaking to you and trying to help you with a thing, my words were falling on deaf ears. So there's no need for me to continue to try to aid you in this particular thing because you have now shown me that my words are not valued by you. Therefore, I take my words someplace else where they are valued. So silence teaches a very difficult lesson. I know a lot of time we want to equate silence to something negative, but I think also we need to recognize that the law of cause and effect must prevail in everything. It is the law of all laws. So if I'm speaking one moment and then the next moment I'm done talking, and I'm giving you one word answers. There's a reason behind it. That's the opportunity for you to search yourself to see why. I can go on and on and on about this particular topic because again, I think a lot of times we view silence in the wrong way. Not necessarily saying that all the other aspects of silence, like stonewalling and things of that nature, is not a thing. I'm not saying that that's this false information. No, that is 100% true. But there are times when silence will teach you a lesson. If you're listening attentively enough, you should be able to hear it even in the midst of silence.
Yeah. I agree. Um, I think silence is one of those things that can be looked at in a couple of different ways. I think sometimes I think it can create I think it can at least start with creating thoughts onto why there is silence, you know. And I think, you know, if there's some silence and I haven't heard from, you know, my son for a certain amount of time, or they hadn't heard from me in a certain amount of time, it's like, you know, why haven't I heard from dad? You know, is something going on? Maybe I need to reach out, and vice versa. You know, I think sometimes, you know, silence is, you know, when we're out and we're out to eat or something like that, and something is going on, or somebody's being rude or something like that, and I'm holding my peace because I think silence sometimes is not just not talking, but sometimes it is not talking. But I guess I was going to kind of say it's layers. Sometimes it's kind of in my head a little bit the way you talk. So like somebody can be really loud and then somebody can be very soft spoken. And then I think sometimes that can kind of be seen as silence too, where someone's not really saying a lot. Could be wrong, but that's kind of where my mind think a little bit. But I think silence sometimes, if I am showing restraint, me and my sons are out, my wife, or we're out together, someone's being rude. My silence is, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. I don't have the extra stuff on everything. My tone of voice, I'm keeping it quiet, different things like that. I think to me, that's kind of silence too. Even though I'm being verbal, I'm just being, like you said, the one word answers and different things like this because the waitress being very rude and nasty and different things like this. But at the same time, I'm trying to teach how to properly behave when we're out in public. You know what I'm saying? Not flying off at the handle at the waitress. So sometimes, someone may be rude and I may not say anything back, or maybe I will. It all depends on the situation. But I don't know. I just think somehow in my mind, all that kind of made sense. But I don't know, man. What you think? I
Nope,
mean,
you're good. You're
yeah,
good. I mean, there are lessons that I can teach through action,
yeah,
that do not necessarily require words, but
mhm,
even my actions speak. Um,
yeah,
I think that's the thing. But what happens when there are no words and no actions happening at the same time? That is total silence, right? You look in the Bible. There's a period of time where God was silent and
mhm,
He didn't speak, and so that's kind of like that's like the first. That's like the one of the things I consider. Like, what would it be like in our lives if He didn't speak to us? And so now
mm,
it's a lesson that he is trying to teach in that moment. But what happened prior to that, that he got silent? All of the bickering, all of the complaining, I want this, I want that. Well, we don't want to do it this way. We want to do it this way. Right. So now, like I said previously, well, my words aren't valued, so I'm gonna be quiet. And so that's why I say I don't think silence is a bad thing. Silence gets a bad rap too many times. But we need to recognize if the Father himself at one point in time chose to be silent and for good reason, then I think when we have good reason, we can choose the same thing and be okay with it.
I agree. That's something we get taught, that that silence piece in coaching. So we was taught, be okay with the silence. Sometimes it's necessarily for the thoughts to gather,
Yep,
so but man, I think we're gonna skip actionable advice this week. I'm looking at the time, and yeah, so
I like
I
it.
think we had a great show, man. I really appreciate you. Appreciate the conversation. I appreciated being able to go. Like I said, we talked about the sons and the father and all of that stuff and teaching the stuff a couple weeks ago, and then to be able to have one, to kind of talk about whether we're teaching or just talking, I think was really important too. Because as parents, we have older kids, and I think, and people who are watching, I think is very important that we understand the difference and kind of get in line with whatever wherever we need to be for that situations. I think at certain times it is okay to just have conversations and just talk. And then there are times that we need to be teaching as well.
Sure.
Um yeah. So what we got going on this week, man? Hearts and Men on Friday, next Sunday. I mean next week, Coach's Corner on Tuesday. What else?
So this week coming up, like you said, Hearts and Men Friday, 8 p.m. Also reframing the image of relationships as well this weekend, Saturday morning at 10:30 a.m. As always, Bible study at 10:30 Sunday morning. And then, I'm sorry, not 10:30, Bible study at 10 Sunday morning, and then TikTok live at 11:30 Sunday morning. Also, don't forget August 16th. August 16th. If
Oh,
you have not reserved your seat yet, look in the show notes, right? Make sure that you reserve your seat because I'm telling you, it's filling up fast.
That part right there. All right, folks, we're going to see y'all for another episode of Coach's Corner next Tuesday, and we are out.